This baby had an accident and fell from a cliff. What this mother bear did was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The morning air was crisp and sweet with pine as the Bennett family made their way along the narrow trail. Olivia Bennett adjusted the baby carrier on her chest, smiling down at her 10-month-old daughter, Emma, whose curious eyes darted from tree to tree. Her husband, Nathan, walked a few paces ahead, occasionally stopping to point out a colorful bird or an unusual plant to their 4-year-old son, Caleb. "Look at that view," Nathan called, gesturing toward a clearing where the mountainside fell away, revealing miles of forest canopy stretching toward distant peaks. Sunlight filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows on the path and illuminating tiny dust motes in the air. They had been planning this family hike for weeks. The Evergreen Trail was known for its stunning vistas and moderate difficulty, perfect for a family with young children who wanted to reconnect with nature. The Bennetts had packed a picnic lunch, extra clothes for the children, and enough water to last the day. Everything had been meticulously planned. What they hadn't planned for was Emma's sudden fascination with a bright blue jay that landed on a branch just off the trail. As Olivia stopped to adjust Caleb's jacket, she loosened the straps on Emma's carrier, allowing the baby to shift position. It was only for a moment, one brief, terrible moment, but it was enough. "Nathan, could you pass me the—" Olivia's words died in her throat as she felt the baby carrier suddenly lighten. Emma, with the surprising strength and determination that babies sometimes possess, had wriggled partially free of her restraints and was leaning dangerously toward the edge of the trail where it dropped off. "Emma, no!" Olivia lunged forward, her fingers just brushing against the soft fabric of her daughter's jacket. But she was too late. A small shower of loose gravel skittered down the mountainside as Emma tumbled over the edge. The sound that escaped Olivia's throat wasn't even a scream. It was something more primal, a sound of pure maternal terror. Nathan spun around, his face transforming from relaxed contentment to horror in an instant. "Emma!" His voice boomed across the canyon, echoing back in a mocking chorus. "Emma! Emma! Emma!" Caleb began to cry, confused and frightened by his parents' sudden panic. Nathan dropped to his knees at the edge of the trail, desperately searching for a glimpse of his baby daughter. The slope was steep but not a sheer drop, a treacherous combination of jagged rocks, fallen tree branches, and loose dirt that stretched downward for at least 70 feet before leveling out into a densely wooded area. "I can see where she fell." Nathan pointed to a disturbed section of earth and broken twigs. "There's a path down over there. It looks steeper, but there are more trees to hold on to." Olivia was already moving, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her fingertips. "Caleb, stay right with Daddy," she instructed, her voice shaking despite her efforts to remain calm. "Emma needs our help right now." Nathan scooped up his son and followed Olivia toward the narrow deer path that offered a potential route down the slope. Every second felt like an eternity. Why couldn't they hear Emma crying? Was she unconscious? Or worse? Olivia refused to let her mind complete that thought. As they began their careful descent, clutching at tree trunks and roots for stability, a soft sound floated up from below. It wasn't Emma's cry, it was something else entirely. A low, rumbling grunt followed by the crack of breaking branches. Nathan and Olivia froze, exchanging a look of fresh fear. They were in black bear country. The park rangers had mentioned it during their orientation, but bears typically avoided the well-traveled trails. Besides, it was broad daylight. "What was that?" Caleb whispered, his small fingers digging into Nathan's shoulder. Before either parent could answer, they heard it again, a shuffling movement in the underbrush below, followed by a sound that made their blood run cold. Emma's distinctive cry, then silence. "Oh, God," Olivia breathed, her maternal instinct overwhelming her fear. She began moving faster down the path, ignoring the cuts on her hands from the rough bark and sharp rocks. Nathan called after her to be careful, but his voice seemed to come from very far away. All that mattered was reaching Emma before whatever was down there did. The path grew steeper, forcing Olivia to half slide down sections of loose dirt. A branch caught her cheek, leaving a thin scratch that she didn't even feel. Her focus narrowed to a single point. The sound of Emma's cries, which had started again, weaker now, but unmistakable. And then, rounding a large boulder, Olivia saw them. Emma lay in a small depression at the base of the cliff, her pink jacket smudged with dirt but miraculously intact. She was crying softly, her little arms reaching upward, not toward Olivia, but toward the massive form that stood over her. The mother bear was enormous from this angle, her dark brown fur catching the filtered sunlight as she lowered her head toward the helpless infant. Olivia felt her heart stop, then restart with painful intensity. Every instinct screamed at her to rush forward, to place herself between her baby and the predator, but fear paralyzed her. Any sudden movement could trigger an attack. Behind her, Nathan had caught up, still carrying Caleb. She heard his sharp intake of breath as he took in the scene. "Don't move," he whispered, placing a restraining hand on her arm. "Don't make any sudden movements." But what happened next defied everything they knew about wild animals. The bear delicately nudged aside a sharp branch that had fallen near Emma's head, then used her broad nose to push away some loose gravel that threatened to slide onto the baby. With surprising gentleness, she sniffed at Emma, from her feet to her head, as if checking for injuries. Emma's cries had subsided to hiccuping sobs, and, most astonishingly, she reached up a tiny hand toward the bear's muzzle. The bear pulled back slightly, tilting her head as if puzzled by this small, strange creature. "She's protecting her," Nathan breathed, his voice filled with disbelief. Olivia couldn't speak. She watched as the mother bear settled onto her haunches beside Emma, positioned between the baby and the steepest part of the slope, as if standing guard. From their vantage point, Olivia could now see Emma more clearly. Her face was scratched, and one arm was bent at an angle that made Olivia's stomach lurch, but she was alive and conscious. "We need to get to her," Olivia whispered. "She needs medical attention." "But how do we get past—" Nathan gestured toward the bear, who seemed to sense their presence but had not yet turned to face them. Olivia took a deep breath. "I'm going to try something." Keen's expression darkened as she slowly turned toward Officer Ramirez, her weapon still raised. "You're making a serious mistake, officer. This situation is classified beyond your clearance level." "Maybe so," Ramirez replied steadily. "But I know proper procedure, and this isn't it. No one's taking any child without proper documentation and court orders." The standoff stretched taut between them, the hotel room suddenly feeling much smaller as two armed individuals faced each other with the Bennett family caught in between. Dr. Walsh took advantage of the distraction to edge closer to Olivia and Emma. "Mrs. Bennett," she whispered urgently, "your daughter's connection is still developing. The bears need more time to establish a stable communication." "I don't care what the bears need," Olivia hissed back. "I want my daughter back to normal." "She can never go back to normal," Walsh said, her eyes intense. "The neural pathways have already formed. But she can learn to control the connection, to use it rather than be used by it." Keen's attention snapped back to them. Step away from the child, Walsh. Her finger tightened on the trigger. What happened next occurred so rapidly that later, none of the adults could agree on the exact sequence of events. Emma suddenly emitted a high-pitched wail, not a human baby's cry, but a sound uncannily similar to a bear's warning call. Simultaneously, the window behind them shattered inward, showering glass across the hotel room, despite being 23 floors up. Officer Ramirez fired a warning shot into the ceiling, the noise deafening in the enclosed space. Caleb screamed, covering his ears. Nathan lunged toward Keene, attempting to disarm her. And through the broken window came a dark shape that at first appeared impossible. A large black bear, somehow scaling the exterior of a high-rise hotel. "They followed us," Olivia gasped, clutching Emma protectively. But the bear that climbed through the window moved with a strange, almost mechanical precision, its eyes gleaming with unnatural intelligence. And as it rose to its full height inside the hotel room, Olivia realized with shock that it wasn't entirely a bear at all. It wore what appeared to be modified equipment strapped to its massive body, including something resembling communications gear and climbing apparatus. "The integration is further along than we thought," Walsh breathed, a mixture of pride and awe in her voice. "They've adapted our technology." Keene broke free from Nathan's grasp and swung her weapon toward the bear. "This is exactly what we feared," she snarled, firing twice in rapid succession. The bear roared in pain as one bullet grazed its shoulder, but it didn't retreat. Instead, it charged forward with surprising speed, knocking Keene off her feet before she could fire again. Her weapon skittered across the floor, coming to rest near the bedroom doorway. Officer Ramirez stood frozen, his police training clearly insufficient for dealing with an intelligent bear in a high-rise hotel room. "Nobody move," he shouted, his voice cracking with stress. The bear ignored him, focusing instead on Emma, who had gone silent, her eyes locked with the animals in what appeared to be silent communication. Then, inexplicably, the bear turned toward Dr. Walsh and made a series of grunting sounds, head movements, and paw gestures. "Yes, I understand," Walsh responded, as if the bear had spoken clearly. She turned to the Bennetts. "This is Scout. He's one of our most advanced communicators. He says more are coming, not just bears, but people who understand their cause. We need to leave immediately." "We're not going anywhere with you or that thing," Nathan declared, pulling Caleb behind him. The bear, Scout, made another series of sounds and gestures. "He says you don't understand the danger," Walsh translated. "Keene isn't working alone. Her organization has been monitoring the bears for years, suppressing evidence of their evolution. They've killed bears who showed signs of advanced intelligence and destroyed research that supported interspecies communication." Keene struggled to her feet, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead where she'd struck the coffee table. "Don't listen to their propaganda," she spat. "The bears aren't evolving naturally. Walsh and her team accelerated their development artificially. They're creating a species that could challenge human dominance." "Is that true?" Olivia asked Walsh. The scientist hesitated. "We facilitated what was already happening naturally. The bear's neurological development was already advancing. We simply provided conditions that allowed it to progress more quickly." "By experimenting on them?" Nathan demanded. "By working with willing subjects," Walsh corrected. "The bears sought us out, not the other way around." The debate was cut short by the sound of heavy footsteps in the hotel corridor. Scout growled, moving protectively in front of Walsh and the Bennetts. "My team," Keene said with grim satisfaction. "You're all out of time." Ranger Dawson, who had been quietly assessing the situation, suddenly spoke up. There's a service elevator at the end of the hall. It leads directly to the loading dock where we have transport waiting. We can't outrun a tactical team, Ramirez objected, still holding his weapon uncertainly. We won't have to, Dawson replied, nodding toward Scout. The Bears have been busy since Walsh's team joined them. You'd be surprised what they've accomplished. As if in response, Scout reared up and pressed what looked like a modified smartphone attached to his equipment harness. The lights in the hotel room flickered, then went out completely, plunging them into darkness broken only by the city lights streaming through the shattered window. Building-wide electrical disruption, Walsh explained with undisguised pride. They've learned to hack basic systems. In the darkness, Olivia felt a large, furry form brush past her, followed by the sound of Keen cursing. When emergency lights flickered on moments later, Keen was gone, and so was her weapon. Scout has neutralized the immediate threat, Walsh said, but we need to move now. Keen's team will have backup protocols. Nathan looked at Olivia, an unspoken question in his eyes. She glanced down at Emma, who seemed calm despite the chaos, her eyes reflecting an awareness far beyond her months. We need to understand what's happening to our daughter, Olivia said quietly, and I don't trust Keen or whoever she works for. Nathan nodded slowly. Okay, but at the first sign that you're lying to us or putting our children in danger, we're done. Fair enough, Walsh agreed. Scout will lead the way. Officer Ramirez looked torn. I can't just let you leave with these children. You have two options, officer, Dawson told him. Come with us and see the truth for yourself, or stay and try to explain to Keen's people why you let us escape. After a moment's hesitation, Ramirez holstered his weapon. My career is probably over either way. Might as well find out what's really going on. With Scout taking point, they moved swiftly into the corridor. The emergency lights cast eerie shadows as they hurried toward the service elevator at the far end. Hotel guests peered nervously from their rooms, clearly alarmed by the power outage and earlier gunshots. Keep moving, Walsh urged, as Scout pressed the elevator call button with surprising dexterity. Keen's team will establish a perimeter around the building. Who exactly is Keen? Nathan asked as they waited for the elevator. What agency does she really work for? She's part of a classified division within the Department of Interior, Dawson explained. Originally formed to manage wildlife conflicts in national parks, they've evolved into something more like a paramilitary organization dedicated to maintaining human dominance over nature. That sounds paranoid, Ramirez commented. Until you see their black site facilities, Walsh replied grimly. They've been experimenting on cognitively advanced animals for decades, studying them while publicly denying their existence. The elevator arrived with a soft chime, its doors sliding open to reveal an empty car. Scout entered first, checking for threats before gesturing the others inside. Where exactly are we going? Olivia asked as they descended rapidly toward the loading dock. To the Bears' sanctuary, Walsh replied. A location Keen's people haven't discovered yet, where bears and humans are learning to coexist. And our children will be safe there, Nathan pressed. Safer than here, Dawson assured him. The Bears have established sophisticated defenses, and more importantly, they can help Emma understand and control her new abilities. The elevator reached the loading dock level, doors opening to reveal a dimly lit concrete area where delivery trucks would normally park. Instead, they found a modified recreational vehicle waiting, its engine running. Our transport, Walsh announced, gesturing them forward. But as they moved toward the vehicle, floodlights suddenly blazed from multiple directions, momentarily blinding them. an amplified voice boomed through the parking garage. "Attention, this is a federal security operation. Surrender immediately. The building is surrounded." Scout roared in frustration, dropping to all fours in a defensive posture. Walsh cursed under her breath. "They moved faster than anticipated," she muttered. "Change of plans." Before anyone could react, Scout charged toward what appeared to be a large drainage grate in the loading dock floor. With surprising strength, he pried it open, revealing a dark tunnel below. "The storm drainage system," Dawson explained hurriedly. "It connects to natural caves outside the city. The bears have been mapping them for months." "You expect us to escape through the sewers?" Nathan asked incredulously. "With an infant and a 4-year-old? "You have a better idea?" Walsh countered, already helping Scout widen the opening. The sound of boots on concrete echoed through the garage as tactical teams began to converge on their position. Olivia clutched Emma tighter, feeling the baby tense against her chest. Emma wasn't crying despite the chaos and noise. Instead, she seemed focused, her eyes fixed on Scout as if receiving instructions. "We don't have a choice," Olivia realized. "They're going to take Emma." Nathan's face was anguished, but he nodded. "Caleb, buddy, we're going on a special adventure, okay? Like exploring a secret cave." Caleb looked frightened but nodded bravely. "Like pirates?" "Exactly like pirates," Nathan agreed, forcing a smile. Scout had the grate completely open now, revealing a 10-foot drop to rushing water below. The bear made a series of gestures that Walsh quickly interpreted. "He says there's a maintenance ledge along the side. It's dry and wide enough to walk on. The water is only a few feet deep if anyone falls." "What about Emma's cast?" "It can't get wet," Olivia objected. In response, Scout removed a waterproof bag from his equipment harness and offered it to her. The level of foresight and planning evidenced by the bear's actions left Olivia speechless. "I'll go first," Dawson volunteered, lowering herself into the opening. "Then you can hand down the children." The approaching footsteps grew louder. Officer Ramirez stood indecisively between the group and the direction of the approaching forces. "Last chance, officer," Walsh said. "With us or against us?" Ramirez looked conflicted, but when the first tactical team member rounded the corner, weapon raised, he made his decision. "Get moving. I'll buy you some time." He raised his police badge high. "JPFD, hold your fire. Civilians present." As Ramirez engaged with the tactical team, creating confusion about jurisdictional authority, the Bennetts followed Dawson into the drainage tunnel. Scout came last, pulling the grate back into place above them, then leading the way along the narrow maintenance ledge that ran alongside the rushing stormwater. The tunnel was dank and echoing, their way lit only by emergency lights spaced at irregular intervals along the ceiling. Emma remained unnaturally calm, her eyes seeming to adjust to the darkness better than the adults. Caleb, trying to be brave, clutched his father's hand tightly as they navigated the slippery ledge. "How far do we need to go?" Nathan asked, his voice barely audible over the sound of rushing water. "About 2 miles, Walsh replied from behind them. "Then we reach the natural cave system that leads outside the city limits." "And then what?" Olivia demanded. "We live in caves with bears for the rest of our lives?" "Of course not," Walsh said. "The caves are just a transit route to the sanctuary. You'll understand when we get there." They continued in silence for what felt like hours, but was probably less than 40 minutes. The passage of time became difficult to gauge in the monotonous darkness of the tunnel, broken only by the rhythmic splash of water and their cautious footsteps on the narrow ledge. Finally, Scout signaled a halt. They had reached a junction where the man-made tunnel intersected with what appeared to be a natural rock formation. A rough opening had been widened into an accessible passage leading away from the drainage system. "This way," Walsh directed, following Scout into the natural cave. The change in atmosphere was immediate. The air felt warmer, drier, and somehow charged with energy. The walls of the cave were smoother than nature would typically create, as if they had been deliberately shaped. At regular intervals, small, glowing markers provided just enough light to navigate by. "The bears did this?" Olivia asked, gesturing toward the markers. Walsh nodded. "They've been preparing for years, establishing safe routes, communication networks, supply caches. It's hard to believe bears could organize on this scale," Nathan said skeptically. "Individual bears couldn't," Walsh admitted, "but they've developed a form of collective consciousness, a shared intelligence that allows them to pool knowledge and coordinate actions across distances. It started with family groups, then expanded to entire regional populations." "Like a hive mind?" Olivia asked. "More like a neural network. Each bear maintains individual identity while contributing to and drawing from collective knowledge." Walsh's voice held unmistakable admiration. "It's an evolutionary marvel, and exactly what Keen's organization fears most." They continued through the winding passages, Scout leading with confidence that suggested intimate familiarity with the route. Emma remained alert, occasionally making soft sounds that seemed to evoke responses from Scout. The bear would pause, look back at the baby, and adjust their course slightly, as if responding to suggestions. "They're communicating," Olivia realized aloud. "Emma is helping navigate." "The connection grows stronger the more it's used," Walsh confirmed. "Emma's developing brain is remarkably adaptive. She's learning their language as they learn hers." "But will she still be our daughter?" Nathan asked, voicing the fear that had been haunting both parents. Walsh's hesitation was telling. "She'll always be Emma," she said carefully, "but she'll also be more, a bridge between species, with access to knowledge and perspectives no purely human child could have." "That's not what we want for her," Olivia insisted. "We want her to have a normal childhood, normal development." "I understand," Walsh said gently, "but that choice may no longer be possible. The connection has already formed. The question now is whether she learns to control it or is controlled by it." Before either parent could respond, Scout froze, raising a paw for silence. The bear's ears twitched, detecting something beyond human hearing range. After a moment of tense stillness, Scout made an urgent grunting sound. "They've found the tunnel entrance," Walsh translated grimly. "We need to move faster." The pace increased, the adults now practically jogging through the cave system, Caleb struggling to keep up until Nathan hoisted him onto his shoulders. Despite her injuries, Emma remained calm, her eyes reflecting the dim light with an almost luminous quality. The cave began to slope upward, the air growing fresher as they climbed. Scout led them around a final bend, and suddenly they were facing a large chamber where the cave ceiling opened to the night sky through a natural chimney. Moonlight filtered down, revealing an astonishing sight. The chamber was filled with bears, at least a dozen of them, all wearing variations of the same modified equipment Scout carried. Some were operating what appeared to be surveillance devices, while others tended to what looked like a communications center built from salvaged human technology. More shocking still were the humans working alongside them, not just Walsh's missing research team, easily identifiable from the newspaper photograph, but at least 10 other people of varying ages. They moved among the bears with comfortable familiarity, some communicating through gestures similar to those Scout had used, others referring to tablets and computers. "Welcome to Outpost 7, Walsh announced with unmistakable pride. "One of 12 similar facilities we've established throughout the mountain range." "What is this place?" Nathan asked, unable to hide his astonishment. "The beginning of coexistence," Walsh replied. "A place where humans and bears are learning to work together rather than against each other." One of the bears, larger than Scout with a gray-flecked muzzle suggesting advanced age, approached them. The other humans in the cave paused their activities, watching with interest. "This is Elder," Walsh said by way of introduction. "She's the leader of this bear community and one of the first to achieve advanced communication abilities." Elder studied them intently, particularly Emma, who returned the gaze with uncanny focus. The bear then made a series of complex gestures toward Walsh. "She welcomes you and thanks you for bringing the bridge child safely to them," Walsh translated. "She says Emma's mind is unusually receptive, a 1 in a million match for cross-species communication." "That doesn't mean you can keep her," Olivia stated firmly, holding Emma closer. Elder made another gesture, which Walsh translated with visible discomfort. "She says Emma is free to choose her path when she's older, but right now she's crucial to their survival. Keen's organization has located and destroyed 3 outposts in the past month. They're systematically hunting down bears who show signs of advanced intelligence. So, we're supposed to let our daughter be your, what? Translator? Ambassador?" Nathan demanded. "More like a teacher," Walsh explained. "The neural patterns in developing human brains provide a template that helps the bears establish stable communication structures. Emma wouldn't be giving anything up. She'd be helping create something new, while growing normally in all other respects." Elder approached Olivia cautiously, stopping a respectful distance away. The massive bear then did something unexpected. She lowered herself to the ground in a position that unmistakably communicated deference. Emma squirmed in Olivia's arms, reaching toward Elder with her uninjured hand. Against her better judgment, Olivia took a small step forward, allowing Emma's fingers to just barely touch the bear's fur. The contact sparked another vision like the one Olivia had experienced in the hotel room, but vastly more detailed and coherent. She saw through Elder's memories, decades of observing humans from hiding, gradually developing understanding of their tools and language, the first tentative contact with Walsh's team 3 years ago, the accelerated learning that followed as the bears gained access to human knowledge, and finally, the devastating raids by Keen's organization that had driven them underground. Beneath these memories ran a powerful current of emotion that Olivia could only describe as desperate hope. Hope that Emma might help them bridge the final gap between species, enabling true communication before it was too late. The vision faded as Emma withdrew her hand, leaving Olivia breathless and shaken. I saw their history," Walsh supplied, "their struggle. Did you understand now why Emma is so important to them?" Before Olivia could respond, the calm of the cave was shattered by a distant but unmistakable sound, dogs barking, growing closer. "Tracking teams," Dawson said urgently. "They're following our scent through the tunnels." Elder rose quickly, issuing what were clearly orders to the other bears through a series of vocalizations and gestures. The cave erupted into activity as bears and humans began gathering equipment and accessing hidden passages leading deeper into the cave system. "We need to move to the primary sanctuary," Walsh said. "This outpost is compromised." "How far is this primary sanctuary?" Nathan asked, readjusting Caleb on his shoulders. The boy was wide-eyed with exhaustion and wonder, watching the bears' organized evacuation with fascination. "About 15 miles through the cave system, then another 10 overland," Walsh admitted. "It's a difficult journey." Emma can't travel that far, Olivia protested. She has a head injury, a broken arm. She needs rest, proper medical care. Elder approached again, making a series of gestures that Walsh translated rapidly. She says there's another option. A small group including your family could be airlifted from a position 2 miles from here. They have human allies with aircraft. Allies? What kind of allies? Nathan asked suspiciously. People who understand what's at stake, Dawson explained. Environmental activists, scientists, even some government officials who disagree with Keene's approach. They've been providing support and protection. The barking grew louder, accompanied now by the unmistakable sound of human voices echoing through the cave system. "We're out of time," Walsh said urgently. "Elder is offering you a choice. Come to the sanctuary where Emma can learn to control her abilities and help the bears, or be evacuated to a safe location where Keene's people won't find you." "And if we choose evacuation?" Olivia asked. "Will Emma's connection to the bears fade?" Walsh exchanged a look with Elder before answering. "Number, the neural pathways are permanently established, but without guidance the connection could become overwhelming as she grows. She might experience the bear's collective consciousness as intrusive thoughts, uncontrolled visions, even personality shifts. So, our choices are to join your bear revolution or watch our daughter struggle with some kind of mental invasion for the rest of her life," Nathan asked bitterly. "I know it's not fair," Walsh acknowledged, "but the connection works both ways. Emma will gain as much as she gives: knowledge, perspective, abilities beyond normal human range." "What kind of abilities?" Olivia asked, remembering Emma's unnaturally calm behavior throughout their escape. "Enhanced spatial awareness, accelerated language acquisition, possibly even aspects of the bear's collective memory," Walsh explained. "But most importantly, control over when and how the connection operates." The sounds of pursuit grew closer. Elder made an urgent sound, gesturing toward one of the passage entrances where several bears and humans were preparing to depart. "We have to decide now," Dawson insisted. Nathan and Olivia looked at each other, a lifetime of decisions compressed into a single moment. Their comfortable, ordinary life had been shattered the moment Emma fell from that cliff edge. Now they faced a future neither could have imagined, one where their daughter might be part human, part something else entirely. "What about Caleb?" Olivia asked suddenly. "How will this affect him?" "He'll be safe at the sanctuary," Walsh assured them, "and he already seems to have developed a receptive link to Emma's transmissions. That's unusual and valuable. He could help her maintain her human connections as she develops her bear ones." Nathan lifted Caleb from his shoulders, looking his son in the eyes. "What do you think, buddy? Should we go with the bears for a while? Help Emma with her special abilities?" Caleb considered this with the simple wisdom of childhood. "Emma likes the bears," he said finally. "They're her friends, and they need our help." Something in his innocent assessment broke through the fear and doubt clouding Olivia's thoughts. She looked down at Emma, who gazed back with eyes that seemed to contain depths beyond her months, yet still held the spark of the baby they had always known. "We'll go to the sanctuary," Olivia decided, "but on our terms. We're not joining your cause or committing to anything long-term. We're just giving Emma the chance to understand what's happening to her." Walsh nodded solemnly. "That's all we're asking for, a chance." Elder made a sound that needed no translation, a rumble of approval and gratitude. She gestured toward the passage where the evacuation was underway, then surprised them by gently taking Caleb's hand in her massive paw. The boy showed no fear, walking alongside the enormous bear with complete trust. As they hurried toward the passage, the sounds of pursuit growing ever closer, Olivia felt Emma stir against her chest. The baby made a soft cooing sound, then touched her mother's face with her small hand. Another vision flickered through Olivia's mind, brief but crystal clear. A sunlit meadow surrounded by mountain peaks, bears and humans moving together in harmony. And at the center, an older girl with Emma's eyes, her hands extended toward both worlds, bridging the gap between species with confident authority. The vision faded, leaving Olivia with an unexpected sense of peace amid the chaos. Whatever lay ahead, Emma would not be lost to them. She would grow into something extraordinary, a pioneer of a new relationship between humans and the natural world. As they plunged into the darkness of the escape tunnel, leaving behind the approaching forces of those who feared this new reality, Olivia held that vision close. Their lives had changed irrevocably, but perhaps change wasn't always something to fear. Sometimes it was something to embrace. 3 months later, the Bennett family sat on the porch of their cabin in what the bears called the sanctuary, a hidden valley deep in the wilderness, where technology and nature had found an unexpected harmony. Solar panels powered research equipment alongside traditional wooden structures. Gardens and orchards provided food for humans, while carefully managed forest areas supported the bears' natural foraging. Emma, her cast recently removed and her head injury fully healed, sat on a colorful blanket playing with blocks. To a casual observer, she might have appeared to be an ordinary 1-year-old engaged in typical exploration. But occasionally she would pause, her expression growing distant for a moment before returning to focus with a smile or laugh that suggested she was receiving pleasant communications from elsewhere. Caleb had adapted to their new life with remarkable ease, dividing his time between homeschool lessons with other sanctuary children and what he called his bear classes, supervised interactions where the children learned to understand basic bear communication gestures while teaching the bears human concepts in return. Nathan still struggled sometimes with their radical change in circumstances. His work as an accountant was impossible here, though he had found purpose helping to manage the sanctuary's complex logistics and supply networks. The transition from suburban professional to what he jokingly called revolutionary accountant hadn't been easy, but seeing Emma's progress had convinced him they'd made the right choice. Olivia had perhaps adapted the most surprisingly of all. Her background in early childhood development had proven unexpectedly valuable in the sanctuary's unique environment. She now worked closely with Dr. Walsh, documenting Emma's developmental milestones and helping create protocols for other families with children who showed receptivity to bear communication. There had been 4 such children identified so far, all under the age of 5, all exhibiting the same uncanny connection Emma had developed. Walsh believed they represented a natural evolution in human-animal relationships, the beginning of what she called cooperative consciousness. Keene's organization, which they now knew was called the Department of Biological Security Control, continued its efforts to locate and destroy the bear human outposts. 3 more had been lost in the past month alone, their inhabitants barely escaping to the sanctuary. The conflict was escalating, with both sides gathering allies and resources. But here, in this protected valley, a different future was taking shape. Emma was at its center, not as a weapon or tool, but as a bridge between worlds that had been separate for too long. As the sun began to set over the mountain peaks, Elder emerged from the forest edge and approached their cabin. The aged bear moved with the dignity of a natural leader, acknowledging the humans with respectful nods as she made her way to Emma. The baby looked up and made a series of gestures that would have seemed random to outsiders, but which Olivia now recognized as simplified bear communication. Elder responded with gentle movements of her massive head and paws. "What are they talking about?" Nathan asked, still unable to interpret the exchanges as fluently as Olivia could. Olivia smiled. "Elder is telling Emma about the new cubs that were born last week. Emma wants to meet them." "Is that safe?" Nathan still worried about their children being around the bears, despite months of peaceful coexistence. "With proper supervision, yes. Elder says the mother has agreed to let Emma establish early connection with the cubs. It could help them develop advanced communication abilities more quickly." Nathan nodded slowly, still adjusting to this new reality where bears and humans negotiated playdates. "And you're okay with this? With all of this?" He gestured around them at the sanctuary that had become their home. Olivia considered the question carefully. Their old life seemed impossibly distant now. The commuting, the preschool applications, the neighborhood barbecues. They had traded comfortable predictability for something wild and uncertain, but also filled with wonder and discovery. "I am," she said finally. "Not because it's perfect or easy, but because it's necessary. Emma was chosen for this, by chance or fate or whatever you want to call the accident that day on the cliff. And now we have the chance to help shape what happens next." As if understanding her mother's words, Emma looked up and smiled. The pure, joyful smile of a child who felt completely at home in her world, however extraordinary that world might be. Elder made one final gesture before departing, which Olivia now understood without translation. "The bridge grows stronger. Soon we will truly speak as one." When the bear had disappeared back into the forest, Nathan put his arm around Olivia's shoulders. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Emma hadn't fallen that day? If that mother bear hadn't been there to protect her?" "Sometimes," Olivia admitted. "But then I remember what Dr. Walsh said when we first arrived here. Sometimes what looks like an accident is actually an invitation, an opportunity to see the world differently." They watched as Emma returned to her blocks, arranging them in patterns that seemed random but might have held meaning beyond human understanding. Their daughter, still their baby girl, but also something more now. A bridge between species, a translator of worlds, a child of two consciousnesses, and perhaps, someday, the architect of a new relationship between humans and the natural world they had too long dominated rather than partnered with. It was a heavy legacy for such tiny shoulders. But as Emma looked up at her parents with eyes that held both innocent wonder and ancient wisdom, Olivia felt a surge of fierce pride. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, as a family, as pioneers, as bridges between worlds. In the distance, a chorus of bear calls echoed through the valley. Not random animal sounds, but a complex communication that Emma tilted her head to listen to, her face lighting up with understanding. She raised her small hand in response, making a gesture that Olivia recognized as the bear's symbol for harmony. It wasn't the life they had planned. But as the sun set over their new home, bathing the sanctuary in golden light, Olivia couldn't imagine wanting any other. Dr. Victoria Keene stood at the observation window, watching the small form huddled in the corner of the sterile white room. The child, barely 2 years old, showed the same unnerving awareness they had documented in the Bennett girl and the others. The same unsettling ability to communicate with the test subjects in ways that defied conventional understanding. "How many have we confirmed now?" asked the man beside her, his military bearing evident despite his civilian clothes. "9, Keene replied, not taking her eyes off the child. "All exhibiting the same neurological markers, all displaying receptivity to the modified bear's communication attempts." "And the Bennetts?" Still unlocated, they've integrated completely with Walsh's network, but it's only a matter of time. She tapped a tablet, bringing up satellite imagery of mountainous terrain. We've narrowed the sanctuary location to 3 possible valleys. The next raid is scheduled for— Belay that, the man interrupted, surprising her. New orders from Oversight. We're changing strategies. Keene turned to him sharply. Sir? Fighting this development directly isn't working. Walsh's group is too well organized, and public sympathy is growing for the intelligent bears narrative. We need to control this evolution, not stop it. What are you suggesting? The man, General Marcus Hayes, though he never used his military title in this facility, smiled thinly. If bridge children like the Bennett girl are inevitable, we should have our own. Children we can shape, train, and eventually deploy. Keene glanced back at the small figure in the observation room. You want to create our own communication channels with the bears? To what end? Information gathering, infiltration, eventually influence. Hayes's expression was calculating. If we can't prevent this new form of communication, we'll master it instead. These children are the key. A cold feeling settled in Keene's stomach as she understood the implications. The parents won't cooperate. They don't need to. We have enough data to create the right conditions now, the right neural stimulation, the right bear subjects. Hayes turned toward the exit. Prepare a proposal by tomorrow. Operation Counterbridge begins immediately. As he left, Keene remained at the window, watching the child who rocked gently back and forth, hands moving in patterns that mimicked bear communication gestures. What had started as a containment operation was evolving into something far more complex and morally ambiguous. A race for control of the bridge between species. A competition to shape the future of human-animal relations. And at the center of it all, children like Emma Bennett, unwitting pioneers on the frontier of consciousness itself. Somewhere in the hidden sanctuary, Emma was likely playing with bear cubs, learning their language, sharing her human perspective, unaware that she had become the opening chapter in a story that would reshape the relationship between humans and the natural world forever. For better or worse, the bridge had been built, and now both sides were determined to control where it led. The true test was just beginning. 5 years later, the sanctuary had grown into a thriving community of bears and humans living in remarkable harmony. What had started as a desperate experiment had evolved into a model that carefully selected scientists were now studying from around the world. Emma, now 6 years old, sat cross-legged in a sunlit meadow, surrounded by a circle of young bears and human children. Though she appeared like any other child with her pigtails and colorful clothing, the fluid gestures of her hands and the occasional low vocalizations she made revealed her unique role. She was teaching the others, both species, the complex language that had emerged from years of cross-species communication. Remember, she said, demonstrating a particular pattern of movements, this means shared understanding. It's important because it acknowledges both perspectives. The bears and children mimicked her gestures with varying degrees of success. Emma moved around the circle, gently correcting postures and movements, her patience remarkable for one so young. From a respectful distance, Olivia watched her daughter with a mixture of pride and wonder. Emma had grown into her role as a bridge between species with a grace that belied the struggles they had faced. The neural connection that had once frightened them had become Emma's greatest strength, a gift that allowed her to move seamlessly between human and bear consciousness without losing herself in either. Nathan joined Olivia, slipping an arm around her waist. "Doctor, Walsh wants to speak with us," he said quietly. "Something about the satellite imagery from yesterday." Olivia nodded. casting one more glance at Emma before following Nathan toward the main research facility, a low, solar-powered building that blended harmoniously with the natural landscape. Inside, Dr. Walsh stood before a wall of monitors, her silver-streaked hair now fully white. Elder, now moving more slowly with age but still commanding respect, sat beside her, studying the images with obvious intelligence. "We've confirmed it," Walsh said without preamble as the Bennetts entered. "Keene's organization has established their own sanctuary, or perhaps facility would be a more accurate term." She gestured to satellite images showing a compound nestled in a valley 200 miles north of their location. Unlike the natural integration of the sanctuary, this facility featured military-grade security and rigid, artificial structures. "What are they doing there?" Olivia asked, though part of her already knew. "Creating their own bridges," Walsh confirmed grimly. "We've identified at least 12 children with neural markers similar to Emma's. They're being systematically trained to communicate with captive bears." "To what end?" Nathan asked. Elder made a series of gestures that Walsh translated. "To control rather than cooperate. To use the bears' intelligence without respecting their autonomy." Olivia felt a chill. "And the bears allow this?" "They have no choice," Walsh explained. "These are bears raised in captivity, without connection to the collective consciousness that developed naturally in the wild population. They're being conditioned to respond to specific commands and inputs." Nathan studied the images with concern. "So it's becoming an arms race, their bridge children versus ours?" Walsh hesitated. "In a sense, but Emma's approach, what we're fostering here, is fundamentally different. We're encouraging mutual understanding and cooperation. They're developing tools for control and exploitation." Elder made another series of gestures, more urgent this time. "She says, 'Time is running short,'" Walsh translated. "The natural world is reaching a tipping point where many species are developing enhanced cognitive abilities, not just bears. How humans respond to this evolution will determine whether we enter a new age of cooperation or conflict." Olivia thought of Emma, teaching her circle of young learners with such care and patience. "What can we do?" "We need to go public," Walsh said firmly. "The sanctuary has remained hidden for security, but secrecy now serves Keene's agenda more than ours. The world needs to see what's possible when humans and animals work together as partners rather than as master and subject." "The risks are considerable," Nathan pointed out. "Exposure could make us more vulnerable to direct action from Keene's organization." "We have allies now," Walsh countered. "Scientists, environmental leaders, even government officials who recognize that cooperation is the only sustainable path forward." Elder rose to her full height, making a declaration that needed no translation. Her stance and expression conveyed absolute certainty and determination. Walsh smiled. "Elder says it's time to build a bigger bridge." The conversation was interrupted when Caleb, now 9 and lankier, but with the same thoughtful eyes, burst into the room. "Emma's doing it again," he announced, excitement and concern mingling in his voice. They followed him quickly to the meadow, where they found Emma standing perfectly still in the center of the circle, her eyes closed, arms extended. The bears and children around her had fallen silent, watching with rapt attention. "What's happening?" Olivia whispered to Caleb. "She's connecting to the others," he explained. "The ones at Keene's facility, she found them in the network." Walsh's eyes widened. That shouldn't be possible across this distance. "Emma says the bridges are getting stronger," Caleb reported. "All the children can feel each other now, even the ones being trained to control instead of connect." As they watched, Emma's eyes opened. She looked different somehow, more centered, more certain, She turned to the adults with an expression of calm determination that seemed impossibly mature for her 6 years. "They're not happy there," she stated simply. "The bears or the children, they're being used." Walsh approached carefully. "You contacted them?" "The children at the northern facility?" Emma nodded. "They didn't know there was another way. They've only been taught to command, not to listen." She looked at her mother. "They need to see the truth, like how you and Daddy saw the truth when I showed you the bear's memories." Olivia knelt before her daughter. "What are you suggesting, sweetheart?" "A council," Emma replied, the word carrying weight beyond her years. "All the bridges together, theirs and ours, all the bears who can speak, all the humans who will listen." She gestured toward the distant mountains. "Neutral ground, no weapons, just truth." The adults exchanged uncertain glances. What Emma proposed was unprecedented and dangerous. "Keen's organization would never agree," Nathan began. "They don't have to," Emma interrupted with calm certainty. "The children will bring their teachers. The bears will bring their humans." She smiled, a child's smile yet somehow ancient. "Bridges work in both directions." Elder approached, making a series of gestures that Emma responded to fluently. Their exchange continued for several moments before Emma turned back to the adults. "Elder agrees. It's time. The division between approaches cannot continue. Control versus cooperation. There must be a single path forward." She looked at each of them in turn. "The bridges will make it happen. It's why we exist." In that moment, looking into her daughter's eyes, Olivia understood that the child they had raised was indeed something new. Not just human, not controlled by bears, but a genuine synthesis, a perspective that could see value in both worlds and weave them together. "When?" Walsh asked, already accepting the inevitable. 3 days, Emma replied confidently. "At dawn, on Eagle Summit." Eagle Summit lived up to its name, a high, windswept plateau where golden eagles nested in the surrounding cliffs. As the sun's first rays spilled across the horizon, 2 groups approached from opposite sides of the mountain. From the south came the sanctuary delegation. Emma, walking confidently between Elder and Walsh, followed by a mixed group of bears and humans, including the Bennett family. The bears wore no equipment here, presenting themselves in their natural state. From the north approached a more regimented group. Children walking in formation beside handlers in paramilitary gear, accompanied by bears wearing control harnesses and monitoring equipment. At their head walked General Hayes, his face grim, and beside him Dr. Keen, whose expression betrayed conflict rather than certainty. The 2 groups stopped 50 yards apart, assessing each other across the open ground. The wind carried the scent of pine and morning dew between them. Emma stepped forward alone, small in the vast landscape, but somehow commanding it. From the northern group, a girl about Emma's age did the same. Thin, pale, her movements precise and controlled. This, Olivia realized, must be Keen's primary bridge child. The 2 girls met in the center of the summit. No words were exchanged that the adults could hear, but something clearly passed between them, a recognition, an understanding. Then, as if responding to an unheard signal, all the children from both sides moved forward, forming a circle in the center of the plateau. The bears followed, arranging themselves in an outer ring around the children. "What are they doing?" Nathan whispered to Walsh. "I don't know," she admitted. This wasn't planned. General Hayes shouted orders to his team, but the children and bears from his group ignored him, their attention fixed on the forming circle. Keen placed a restraining hand on his arm, watching the proceedings with keen scientific interest. Within the circle, Emma and the other girl, whose name, they would later learn, was Sophia, stood face to face, hands clasped. Around them, the other children joined hands as well, and beyond them, the bears moved in synchronous patterns, their bodies swaying in what appeared to be a coordinated dance. A low humming rose from the circle. Not quite human speech, not quite bear vocalization, but something in between. It grew in volume and complexity until it seemed to vibrate through the mountain itself. And then, something extraordinary happened. The air above the circle appeared to shimmer and condense, forming what witnesses would later struggle to describe: a visible network of light, a three-dimensional web of connections that linked each participant to all others. It expanded outward, eventually encompassing even the watching adults. What followed was not communication in any conventional sense. It was direct understanding, a temporary merging of perspectives that allowed each participant to experience the other's reality. Hayes and his team experienced the bears' consciousness, their complex social structures, their deep connection to the land, their fear of human encroachment, and their desperate desire for understanding rather than domination. The sanctuary humans experienced the military perspective, the genuine fear of losing human primacy, the concern for security and stability, the hesitant recognition that evolution could not be contained, only guided. And everyone experienced the children's vision, a world where species communicated across boundaries without losing their unique natures, where difference enhanced rather than threatened, where cooperation replaced control. How long this shared consciousness lasted, none could later say with certainty. It might have been minutes or hours. But when it finally faded, the summit had fallen silent except for the wind and the distant cry of eagles. Emma and Sophia released each other's hands and turned to face the adults. When they spoke, they did so in perfect unison, their voices blending as their minds had. "The bridge is built," they announced. "What crosses it now is up to you." 1 year later, the International Council for Interspecies Communication held its first public symposium. Representatives from governments, scientific institutions, and conservation organizations gathered alongside carefully selected animal ambassadors, not just bears, but other species showing signs of emerging communication abilities: elephants, cetaceans, certain primates, and even some birds. The bridge children, now numbering 37 worldwide, served as translators and facilitators. Under Emma and Sophia's leadership, they had developed protocols for ethical communication that respected both human and animal autonomy. Keen's organization had been restructured, its resources redirected toward protection rather than control of evolving species. Hayes had retired, replaced by leadership more aligned with the cooperative approach. The competing sanctuaries had merged, combining their knowledge and resources. The Bennett family had returned to a version of normal life. They maintained a home in the original sanctuary, but also an apartment in the city, where Caleb attended a progressive school that incorporated interspecies communication into its curriculum. Nathan worked as financial director for the new council, while Olivia headed its educational division. Emma divided her time between typical childhood activities and her ongoing role as a primary bridge. She played soccer, took piano lessons, and had sleepovers with friends. But she also regularly communed with the Bear Collective, helping translate their concerns and insights for human understanding. It wasn't a perfect arrangement. There were still those who feared the evolution happening around them, who saw the bridges as threats rather than opportunities. There were still conflicts over resources, territory, and the pace of change. But the alternative, a world split between control and cooperation, between fear and understanding, had been rejected by those who had experienced the vision on Eagle Summit. The path forward, though challenging, was now shared. On the anniversary of that summit meeting, Olivia found Emma sitting alone on the porch of their sanctuary home, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and crimson. "What are you thinking about?" Olivia asked, sitting beside her daughter. Emma smiled. The same smile she'd always had, though now it carried wisdom beyond her years. "I was remembering when I fell from the cliff. How scared you were, how everything changed in that one moment." "Are you sorry it happened?" Olivia asked carefully. Emma considered this. "No," she said finally. "It was hard sometimes. It still is. Being between worlds isn't always easy." She looked up at her mother. "But it's where I belong. Where we all belong, really. Between what we were and what we're becoming." Olivia put her arm around her daughter's shoulders, marveling at how ordinary and extraordinary she was. A child who enjoyed ice cream and bedtime stories, who sometimes communed with the collective consciousness of an entire species. "Elder says the real work is just beginning," Emma continued. "As more species evolve, as more children develop bridge abilities, everything will change." She leaned against her mother. "But that's okay. Change is just another word for growth." In the forest beyond their home, a bear called out. Not a random sound, but a structured communication that Emma tilted her head to listen to. She smiled and raised her hand in response, making a gesture that Olivia now recognized as the bear's symbol for hope. The sun slipped behind the mountains, painting the sky in deepening shades of purple and blue. Stars began to appear, bright points of light connecting to form patterns that had guided travelers for millennia. New patterns were forming now, connections between minds, between species, between ways of being that had evolved separately but could no longer remain apart. And at the center of it all, a child who had fallen from a cliff and been caught not by human hands, but by something older and wilder, something that had recognized in her the possibility of a bridge between worlds. "What happens next?" Olivia asked softly. Emma's eyes reflected the emerging stars as she smiled at her mother. "We keep building bridges," she said simply, "until everyone can cross." And the end of Caleb back. Before Nathan could protest, Olivia took a small step forward, then another. She began to hum softly, the lullaby she sang to Emma every night before bed. The bear's ears twitched, and she slowly turned her massive head toward the sound. Olivia's heart threatened to burst from her chest as she found herself looking directly into the dark, intelligent eyes of the wild animal. She continued humming, keeping her movements slow and deliberate as she inched closer to her baby. The bear rose to her full height, and Olivia froze. For one terrible moment, she was certain she had made a fatal mistake. But then, with a soft grunt that seemed almost like resignation, the bear took a few lumbering steps backward. It was the opening Olivia needed. She rushed the remaining distance to Emma, gathering her precious child into her arms with a sob of relief. Emma whimpered, her small body trembling as she clutched at her mother's shirt with her uninjured arm. "Shh, I've got you now. Mommy's here," Olivia murmured, backing away slowly, her eyes never leaving the bear. The massive animal watched them, her posture alert but not aggressive. And that's when Olivia noticed something moving in the undergrowth behind the bear. Two small, dark shapes that emerged cautiously from the shadows. Cubs. The mother bear had been protecting her own young when she found Emma. Nathan had made his way down to join them, still carrying a wide-eyed Caleb. "We need to get back up to the trail," he said urgently. "Emma needs a doctor, and we don't want to be here when those cubs get curious." The family began their slow, careful ascent, Olivia cradling Emma as gently as possible to avoid aggravating her injuries. The baby's cries had subsided to occasional whimpers, her eyes drooping with exhaustion. Behind them, The mother bear shepherded her cubs in the opposite direction, occasionally glancing back as if to ensure the humans were leaving her territory. As they reached the main trail, Olivia looked back one last time. The bear had paused at the edge of the forest, her massive form silhouetted against the darker shadows of the trees. For a brief moment, their eyes met across the distance, mother to mother, before the bear turned and disappeared into the wilderness with her cubs. "Did you see that?" Olivia whispered. "She could have killed Emma. She could have attacked us all, but she didn't." Nathan nodded, his face still pale with the aftermath of fear and relief. "I've never heard of anything like it. It's like she recognized Emma as a baby, as something to protect rather than threaten." Caleb, who had been unusually quiet throughout the ordeal, tugged at his father's sleeve. "The bear was a mommy too, right, Daddy?" "She was taking care of her babies, like Mommy takes care of me and Emma." Out of the mouths of babes, Olivia thought. Perhaps it was as simple as that. A universal understanding between mothers, transcending species and instinct. As they hurried along the trail toward the ranger station, Emma nestled against her chest, Olivia found herself overwhelmed by a complex mixture of emotions. Gratitude for their survival, fear for Emma's injuries, and a profound sense of wonder at what they had just witnessed. Whatever had motivated the bear's unusual behavior, whether some form of cross-species empathy or simply a quirk of animal instinct, it had saved Emma's life. And that was a story they would be telling for years to come. The ranger station came into view as they rounded a bend in the trail, its wooden structure a welcome sight after their harrowing ordeal. Park Ranger Melissa Dawson was sorting through trail maps when the Bennett family burst through the door, disheveled and frantic. "We need help," Nathan gasped, his breath coming in short bursts. "Our baby fell from the cliff on Evergreen Trail. Her arm is injured." Ranger Dawson's training kicked in immediately. She swept aside the maps and cleared a space on the counter. "Let me see her," she said, her voice calm but authoritative. Olivia gently laid Emma down. The baby's face was pale beneath the dirt and scratches, her soft whimpers breaking Olivia's heart. Ranger Dawson examined her with practiced efficiency, her expression growing increasingly concerned as she assessed the bent arm. "Definitely broken," she confirmed, reaching for the first aid kit. "And she may have other injuries we can't see. We need to get her to a hospital. I'll radio for emergency transport." As Ranger Dawson made the call, Olivia recounted what had happened, including the extraordinary behavior of the mother bear. The ranger paused mid-sentence into her radio, turning to stare at Olivia with disbelief. "A black bear protected your baby? Are you certain it wasn't just investigating?" "She was guarding her," Nathan insisted. "She moved debris away from Emma and stood between her and the slope. She even had cubs nearby, but she didn't act aggressively toward Emma at all." Ranger Dawson frowned. "That's highly unusual. Bears with cubs are typically extremely dangerous." She finished her radio call, then pulled out a logbook. "I need to document this encounter. Bear behavior is closely monitored in the park." As they waited for the emergency helicopter, Ranger Dawson asked more detailed questions. Where exactly had they seen the bear? How large was she? What coloration? Were there any distinguishing marks? "Why so many questions?" Olivia asked, not wanting to let go of Emma's good hand even for a moment. Ranger Dawson hesitated. "There's been a situation developing in the park over the past month. Several bear sightings that don't match typical behavior patterns." She lowered her voice. "And a research team went missing 3 weeks ago. They were studying black bear populations in the eastern section." A chill ran down Olivia's spine that had nothing to do with the cool air of the ranger station. "Missing?" You mean they haven't returned yet? They missed 2 scheduled check-ins. Search parties found their camp partially destroyed, with some equipment missing. But no. She glanced at Caleb, who was listening intently, and chose her next words carefully. No definitive evidence of what happened to them. Before they could ask more questions, the distant thump of helicopter blades cut through the air. Ranger Dawson quickly wrapped Emma's arm in a temporary splint and prepared her for transport. "I'm going with her," Olivia stated, her tone allowing no argument. Nathan nodded. "Caleb and I will follow in the car. We'll meet you at the hospital." As the helicopter lifted off with Olivia and Emma on board, Nathan turned back to Ranger Dawson. "What aren't you telling us about these bears?" The ranger sighed, rubbing her temples. "It's probably nothing. Just some unusual patterns we've been tracking. Bears approaching campsites but not raiding food. Following hikers but keeping their distance." She closed her logbook. "And there was one report, just last week, of a bear that seemed to be trying to communicate." "Communicate? How?" "A wildlife photographer claimed a female bear deliberately led him to an injured hiker who had fallen off trail. The hiker confirmed it, said the bear paced back and forth between him and the main trail until someone noticed." Ranger Dawson shook her head. "Sounds crazy, I know. We assumed the photographer was exaggerating for publicity. But now, with your experience, you think something's happening to the bears in this park?" Nathan asked, instinctively pulling Caleb closer to his side. "I don't know," Ranger Dawson admitted, "but I've worked with wildlife for 15 years, and I've never seen behavior like what's been reported recently." She handed Nathan a card. "This has my direct number. If you remember anything else about the encounter, anything at all that seemed strange or unusual, please call me." Nathan pocketed the card, his mind racing. "We should get to the hospital," he said, guiding Caleb toward the door. "One more thing," Ranger Dawson called after them. "The research team that went missing, they were studying cognitive abilities in bears, testing intelligence, problem-solving skills, even rudimentary communication." Her expression was troubled. "Their lead researcher had some controversial theories about accelerated evolution in isolated populations. The Jefferson Memorial Hospital emergency room was a blur of activity as doctors assessed Emma's injuries. X-rays confirmed what they already knew. Her right arm was broken in 2 places, but revealed another concern: a hairline fracture in her skull. "We need to monitor her closely," Dr. Patricia Lynn explained, her kind eyes softening the blow of her words. "Head injuries in infants can be unpredictable. We'll keep her overnight at minimum." Olivia nodded numbly, her adrenaline finally crashing as exhaustion took over. The events of the day seemed dreamlike now, sitting in the sterile hospital room with the steady beep of monitors tracking Emma's vital signs. Nathan arrived with Caleb an hour later, his face etched with worry. He'd barely stepped into the room when Olivia noticed the strange expression he wore. "What is it?" she asked. "Did something else happen?" Nathan glanced at Caleb, who was tiredly climbing onto a chair in the corner of the room. "I'll tell you later," he murmured. "How's Emma?" "Stable, sleeping now. They set her arm and did a brain scan. No bleeding, thank God, but there's a small fracture. They want to keep her under observation." Nathan took her hand, his palm sweaty against hers. "She's going to be okay," he said, but Olivia noticed he kept glancing toward the window, as if expecting to see something, or someone watching them. Night fell. Caleb eventually dozed off on the small couch in Emma's room, while Nathan and Olivia took turns sitting beside their baby's bed. During one of these shifts, around midnight, Olivia finally pressed Nathan about what was bothering him. "The ranger told me something strange," he admitted, keeping his voice low. "There's been weird bear behavior throughout the park, and a research team studying bear intelligence went missing 3 weeks ago." Olivia's blood ran cold. "You think there's a connection to what happened with Emma?" "I don't know what to think," Nathan confessed, but the ranger seemed spooked. Said there have been reports of bears acting almost human-like, following people, not attacking when they should, even supposedly helping lost hikers. "That's impossible," Olivia whispered, though the image of the bear gently nudging debris away from Emma flashed in her mind. "I know how it sounds, but we saw what we saw today. That bear recognized Emma was in trouble. She protected her." Nathan ran a hand through his hair. "The ranger gave me her card, asked us to call if we remembered anything unusual." "Like what?" "I don't know. Anything that might explain why a predator would protect a human child instead of seeing it as prey." They fell silent, the weight of the question hanging between them. Eventually, exhaustion claimed them both, and they drifted into uneasy sleep in the uncomfortable hospital chairs. Olivia woke suddenly in the darkest part of night, her neck stiff from the awkward position. Something had disturbed her sleep, a sound or movement she couldn't identify. She blinked, orienting herself in the dim light of Emma's hospital room. Nathan was slumped in his chair, Caleb still curled on the couch. Emma's monitors beeped steadily, but something felt wrong. Olivia rose and approached her baby's bed, checking the IV line and the cast on her tiny arm. Everything seemed in order, but the feeling of wrongness persisted. That's when she noticed it. A small dark smudge on Emma's hospital gown that hadn't been there before. Olivia leaned closer, squinting in the low light. It looked like dirt, or... She reached out to touch it, and her fingers came away sticky. Not dirt. Something else. Puzzled, Olivia flicked on her phone's flashlight for a better look, careful to aim it away from Emma's face. The smudge was actually a dark, reddish-brown stain, about the size of a quarter. As she examined it, she noticed something else. A faint, musky odor that seemed out of place in the antiseptic hospital environment. It reminded her of something from earlier that day. The bear. Olivia's heart began to pound. She quickly checked the hospital room door, still closed, and the windows, still sealed shut. There was no way an animal could have entered the room. And yet, that distinctive wild scent lingered in the air, and the stain on Emma's gown looked suspiciously like something that had been transferred by contact. She was about to wake Nathan when Emma stirred, her small face scrunching in that way that usually preceded crying. But instead of crying, Emma's eyes opened, and she stared directly at Olivia with an intensity that seemed impossible for a 10-month-old. And then Emma smiled, a wide, knowing smile that sent a shiver down Olivia's spine. It wasn't her daughter's usual happy grin. There was something different about it, something almost adult. "Emma," Olivia whispered, her mouth suddenly dry. The baby blinked slowly, her gaze unnervingly steady. Then, as if nothing strange had happened, her expression returned to normal, and she began to fuss softly, reaching for her mother with her uninjured arm. Olivia gathered Emma close, trying to shake off the eerie feeling. She was being ridiculous. The stress and trauma of the day were making her imagine things. Emma was just a baby, her baby, who had survived a terrible accident. But as she rocked Emma back to sleep, Olivia couldn't help noticing that the strange, musky odor seemed to fade, and by morning, the mysterious stain on Emma's gown had disappeared as well, leaving Olivia to wonder if she had imagined the entire episode. "All her vitals look good, and the follow-up scan shows no increase in swelling," Dr. Lin announced the next morning, reviewing Emma's chart. "I'd like to keep her one more night for observation, but she's recovering remarkably well for an infant who fell down a cliff." Relief flooded through Olivia. She'd been too afraid to mention the strange, nighttime incident to Nathan or the medical staff, fearing they would think she was becoming unhinged from stress. "When can we take her home?" Nathan asked, bouncing a restless Caleb on his knee. "If all goes well, tomorrow morning, Doctor," Lynn replied. "You've got a resilient little fighter there." As the doctor left, a hospital volunteer appeared with a cart of books and toys for the pediatric patients. "Would your little boy like something to read or play with?" she asked kindly, smiling at Caleb. While Nathan helped Caleb select a puzzle, Olivia noticed a newspaper tucked beside the volunteer's handbag on the cart. The front page headline caught her eye. "Search continues for missing research team in Pinewood National Park." "Excuse me," Olivia said. "May I see that newspaper?" The volunteer handed it over with a sympathetic smile. "Of course, dear. Anything to help pass the time." Olivia scanned the article quickly, her pulse quickening as she read, "The search for the 4-member research team missing in Pinewood National Park entered its 3rd week yesterday, with authorities now expressing significant concern for their safety. Dr. Helena Walsh, a renowned wildlife behaviorist, along with her assistants Michael Chen, Tara Rodriguez, and Jason Kim, were conducting controversial research on cognitive development in black bears when contact was lost on April 15th. Park officials have discovered the team's campsite in a state of disarray, with research equipment missing but no signs of animal attack. It's as if they simply walked away," stated Park Superintendent Robert Morgan. "Doctor?" Walsh's research has drawn criticism from the scientific community for her radical theories on accelerated evolution and cross-species communication. Her most recent published paper suggested that certain isolated bear populations may be developing advanced problem-solving abilities and rudimentary symbolic thinking. "Her work veers into pseudoscience," said Dr. Martin Feldman of Berkeley University. "The idea that bears could develop human-like cognitive abilities in such a short evolutionary time frame is absurd." Walsh's colleagues, however, defend her methods. "Helena is a meticulous scientist," said Dr. Amelia Jordan of the Wildlife Conservation Institute. "If she claims to have evidence of enhanced cognitive abilities in these bears, I'm inclined to take her seriously." Anyone with information regarding the missing research team is urged to contact park authorities immediately. Below the article was a photograph of the research team, smiling in front of their equipment. Dr. Walsh stood in the center, a stern-looking woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a practical bun. "Nathan," Olivia called softly, "you need to see this." He joined her, reading over her shoulder while Caleb worked on his new puzzle. When he finished, Nathan met her gaze, his expression troubled. "This is what the ranger was talking about," he murmured. "The missing research team." "They were studying bear intelligence," Olivia said, her voice barely audible. "And now, bears in the park are acting strangely." Nathan's brow furrowed. "You're not suggesting—" "I don't know what I'm suggesting," Olivia interrupted. "But last night something happened." Hesitantly, she told him about waking to find the strange stain on Emma's gown, the musky odor, and Emma's unsettling smile. Instead of dismissing her concerns, Nathan's face grew pale. "I had a dream last night," he admitted. "I was standing in a forest clearing, and there was a circle of bears around me. They were watching me, like they were waiting for something. And then one of them, the one in the center, stood up on its hind legs and started talking." "What did it say?" Olivia asked, despite the absurdity of the conversation. Nathan shook his head. I don't remember the exact words. Something about the child and the bridge. It didn't make sense, but it felt so real. He rubbed his temples. I woke up sweating. They stared at each other in the sterile hospital room, the beeping of Emma's monitor suddenly ominous rather than reassuring. We should call the ranger, Olivia decided, reaching for Nathan's pocket where he'd stored the card. Tell her about all of this. But before Nathan could retrieve the card, Emma began to cry. Not her usual fussy wail, but a high, panicked shriek that sent nurses rushing into the room. Olivia reached for her daughter, but the medical staff pushed her aside, checking monitors and speaking in urgent tones. Her heart rate is spiking, one nurse reported. Oxygen levels dropping, said another. Dr. Lin appeared in the doorway. What happened? She demanded, moving quickly to Emma's bedside. Nothing, Olivia insisted, her own heart racing with fear. She was sleeping peacefully and then just started screaming. Dr. Lin examined Emma, her movements swift and precise. She's having some kind of stress response. Did something frighten her? No, we were just talking quietly, Nathan explained, holding Caleb back from the bed. The doctor frowned, then noticed the newspaper still clutched in Olivia's hand. What's that? Olivia glanced down. Just a news article about... She broke off as something caught her eye, something she hadn't noticed before. In the background of the photograph of the research team, partially obscured by equipment, was a whiteboard with notes and diagrams, and at the center of that whiteboard was a crude drawing of what appeared to be a bear standing over a small human figure. The image was nearly identical to what they had witnessed on the mountainside, a bear protecting a child. "Oh my God," Olivia whispered, just as Emma's cries abruptly ceased and the monitors returned to normal. The medical staff looked at each other in confusion. Her vitals are stabilizing, one nurse reported, bewildered. Dr. Lin checked Emma carefully. Everything seems normal now. It's almost as if, well, I'm not sure what happened. As the staff slowly filtered out of the room, Olivia showed Nathan what she had seen in the photograph. His face drained of color. That can't be a coincidence, he muttered. They were researching something specific about bear behavior, something they might not have wanted publicly known. Olivia's mind raced. The ranger mentioned controversial theories. What if Dr. Walsh discovered something extraordinary? Something about bear intelligence or behavior that others wouldn't believe? Something like bears protecting human children instead of attacking them? Nathan suggested, his voice hollow. Emma gurgled softly in her hospital bed, drawing their attention. She was awake now, watching them with clear, bright eyes that suddenly seemed too aware, too focused for a baby her age, and in that moment, both parents felt the same chilling certainty. Whatever had happened on that mountainside was far from over. Their encounter with the mother bear wasn't just an isolated incident of unusual animal behavior. It was part of something larger, something neither of them understood, something that somehow, impossibly, involved their baby daughter. Sleep evaded the Bennett family that night. Olivia dozed fitfully in the chair beside Emma's hospital bed, while Nathan took Caleb to a nearby hotel, after the 4-year-old became too restless in the confined hospital room. Every time Olivia closed her eyes, she saw the image from the research team's whiteboard, the bear standing protectively over a human figure, and then the real-life scene on the mountainside that had mirrored it with terrifying accuracy. Around 3 a.m., she was startled awake by a noise at the window. The hospital room was on the 4th floor, making the soft scratching sound against the glass all the more unsettling. Olivia's heart hammered as she approached the window, telling herself it must be tree branches or debris caught in the wind. But when she pulled back the curtain, she found herself staring into absolute emptiness. No tree branches, no birds, nothing that could explain the sound. Just the dark parking lot below and the distant forest beyond, a black mass against the night sky. She was about to return to her chair when movement caught her eye. Something large and dark crossing the hospital's rear parking lot, moving with purpose toward the tree line. Though it was too distant to identify clearly, its lumbering gait was unmistakable. A bear, in the middle of the city. Olivia fumbled for her phone, intending to record the impossible sight, but by the time she activated the camera, the figure had disappeared into the trees. Had she imagined it? Was exhaustion playing tricks on her mind? She glanced back at Emma, who slept peacefully, her small chest rising and falling beneath the hospital blanket. In sleep, she looked exactly like the innocent baby she was supposed to be. No unnerving smiles, no strange stains, just her daughter, vulnerable and precious. "What's happening to us?" Olivia whispered to the quiet room. When morning finally came, it brought with it a semblance of normalcy. Dr. Lin arrived to check on Emma, declaring her recovery remarkable and approving her discharge later that day. Nathan returned with Caleb, bringing fresh clothes and coffee. "Any more strange occurrences?" Nathan asked quietly while Caleb was distracted by the television. Olivia hesitated, then told him about the scratching at the window and the bear-like figure she'd spotted in the parking lot. Instead of skepticism, Nathan's face showed grim acceptance. "I called Ranger Dawson this morning," he said. "Left a message about what we saw in that newspaper photo. Did she call back?" "Not yet." Nathan sipped his coffee, his eyes troubled. "But I did some research on Dr. Walsh, the missing lead researcher. She's published some unusual theories, not just about bear intelligence, but about interspecies consciousness transference." "What does that even mean?" "From what I could gather, she believed that, under certain conditions, consciousness could be shared between species, that animals might be able to influence human thoughts, or vice versa." He shook his head. "It sounds like science fiction, but she was a respected scientist before these theories." Olivia looked over at Emma, who was watching them with those unnervingly alert eyes. "You don't think—" "I don't know what to think anymore," Nathan admitted, "but something strange is happening, and it started when Emma fell near that bear." A knock on the door interrupted their conversation. A nurse entered, followed by a tall, severe-looking woman in a park ranger uniform. It wasn't Ranger Dawson from yesterday. "Mr. and Mrs. Bennett?" the ranger asked, her voice clipped and formal. "I'm Senior Ranger Victoria Keene. I understand you reported an unusual bear encounter yesterday." Nathan stood, extending his hand. "Yes, that's right. We spoke with Ranger Dawson." The woman ignored his outstretched hand. "Ranger Dawson has been temporarily reassigned. I'll be handling all wildlife incident reports in her absence." Something in the ranger's tone set off warning bells in Olivia's mind. "Reassigned? Why?" Ranger Keene's expression remained impassive. "Standard protocol rotation. Nothing unusual. Now, I need to take your official statement about yesterday's incident." As Nathan recounted their experience on the trail, Olivia noticed that Ranger Keene took minimal notes, occasionally glancing at Emma with an expression that seemed almost calculating. "And you say the bear actually protected your child?" Ranger Keene's tone was skeptical. "Yes," Olivia confirmed. "She kept debris away from Emma and stood guard over her. She had cubs nearby but didn't show any aggression toward our baby." Ranger Keene made a non-committal sound. "Bears are unpredictable creatures. What you interpreted as protection may have been simple curiosity." It wasn't curiosity, Nathan insisted. And Ranger Dawson mentioned other unusual bear behaviors in the park, plus the missing research team. That situation is being handled by the appropriate authorities, Ranger Keene interrupted sharply. It has nothing to do with your incident. She closed her notebook with a snap. I'll file this report, but I should warn you that spreading unfounded stories about wildlife behavior can cause unnecessary panic. Are you suggesting we're making this up? Olivia asked, her voice rising. The ranger's cold eyes flickered to Emma again. I'm suggesting that traumatic experiences can affect perception. Your child fell. You were frightened. It's natural to misinterpret animal behavior under stress. Before either parent could respond, Ranger Keene handed them a business card. If you remember any other details, factual details, please contact me directly, not Ranger Dawson or anyone else. With that, she turned and left, her boots clicking sharply against the hospital floor. What was that about? Olivia asked when the door closed behind the ranger. Nathan was examining the business card with a frown. I don't know, but something feels off. Why would they reassign Dawson right after our report? And did you notice how Keene kept looking at Emma? Olivia nodded slowly, like she was searching for something. Nathan pulled out his phone. I'm going to try Dawson's number again. I want to know what's really going on. While Nathan stepped into the hallway to make the call, Olivia began gathering their belongings in preparation for Emma's discharge. As she packed the baby's few items into a bag, she noticed something tucked into the folds of the blanket. A small, smooth stone with unusual markings etched into its surface. Olivia picked it up, turning it over in her palm. The markings didn't look like any language she recognized, more like crude pictograms or symbols, and she was certain the stone hadn't been there earlier. Nathan, she called, her voice trembling slightly. Come look at this. He returned, his expression grim. Dawson's not answering, and the park office said she's on extended leave, whatever that means. His eyes fell on the stone in Olivia's hand. What's that? I found it in Emma's blanket. It wasn't there before. She showed him the strange markings. Nathan examined it carefully. These look like drawings, animals maybe, and this one could be a person. Where did it come from? And who put it there? Before Nathan could respond, Dr. Lynn arrived with Emma's discharge papers. Good news. Your little miracle is officially cleared to go home. Just make sure to follow up with your pediatrician in 3 days and keep the cast dry. As they completed the paperwork and prepared to leave, Olivia slipped the strange stone into her pocket, deciding not to mention it to the hospital staff. Something told her this was connected to everything else that had been happening. The bear's behavior, the missing researchers, Ranger Dawson's sudden reassignment, and the unsettling changes they'd observed in Emma. Home should have felt like a sanctuary, but as they pulled into their driveway that evening, the familiar 2-story colonial offered little comfort. The events of the past 2 days had shifted something fundamental in their perception, leaving them unable to fully relax even in their own space. Caleb, thankfully, seemed to have bounced back from the trauma with the resilience of childhood. He chattered about his new dinosaur puzzle from the hospital as Nathan carried him inside, while Olivia carefully managed Emma's car seat, mindful of her injuries. As they entered the house, Olivia noticed the answering machine blinking. 3 new messages. The first was mundane, a reminder about Caleb's upcoming dental appointment. The second was from Nathan's mother, checking in after hearing about Emma's accident through the family grapevine. But the third message made both parents freeze in place. "This is Melissa Dawson," came the ranger's familiar voice, though now it was hushed and tense. I don't have much time. They're monitoring communications. What you saw with the bear, it's real. Walsh's research, she found something. Something they want to contain. Don't trust Keene or anyone from park administration. They're involved. The bears are trying to—" The message cut off abruptly, leaving an ominous silence in its wake. "What the hell is going on?" Nathan whispered, his face pale. Olivia shook her head, instinctively holding Emma closer. "I don't know, but Dawson sounds terrified. And who are they? The park administration?" More importantly, what was she going to say about the bears? The bears are trying to what? A soft sound from Emma drew their attention. The baby was staring at the answering machine, her uninjured arm outstretched toward it, fingers grasping as if trying to reach something. "She wants us to play it again," Caleb said matter-of-factly, startling both parents. "What do you mean, sweetie?" Olivia asked. Caleb shrugged. "Emma wants to hear the lady talking about the bears again. She told me." A chill ran down Olivia's spine. "Caleb, what do you mean Emma told you? She's just a baby. She can't talk yet." "Not with her mouth," Caleb explained patiently, as if it were obvious. "With her thoughts. She's been doing it since the hospital. Didn't you hear her?" Nathan and Olivia exchanged horrified glances. "What else has Emma told you?" Nathan asked carefully. Caleb thought for a moment. "She says the bears are her friends now, and that the special doctor lady is with them. And something about a bridge. I don't understand that part." Olivia's knees felt weak. She sank into the nearest chair, still cradling Emma, who was now looking up at her with that same unsettling awareness she'd shown in the hospital. "Nathan," she whispered, "what's happening to our baby?" Before he could answer, a sharp crack sounded from the backyard. Nathan moved quickly to the kitchen window, peering out into the gathering dusk. "There's something out there," he said tensely. "Something large." Olivia joined him at the window, her heart hammering. At first, she saw nothing but their ordinary backyard, the swing set, the garden beds, the edge of forest that bordered their property. Then a shadow moved among the trees, and another. Bears. At least two of them, their dark shapes just visible in the fading light, hovering at the boundary between forest and yard. "Call 911, Nathan said, his voice tight with fear. But as Olivia reached for her phone, Emma began to cry. Not in pain or distress, but with a rhythmic, almost deliberate pattern. 3 short cries, then 3 longer ones, then 3 short again. The bears responded immediately, swaying from side to side in what appeared to be a synchronized movement. "Oh my God," Olivia breathed. "She's communicating with them." Nathan grabbed Emma from Olivia's arms, an instinctive protective gesture. "This isn't possible. She's a baby." "The bridge," Caleb said suddenly, pointing at Emma. "She's the bridge. That's what they need her for." "Who needs her for what?" Nathan demanded, his voice rising with panic. Caleb just shrugged again. "The bears, and the special doctor lady. They need a bridge because they can't talk to us without one." Outside, one of the bears rose onto its hind legs, its massive silhouette eerily human-like against the darkening sky. It raised a paw, pressing it against the invisible boundary of their yard, as if testing a barrier. "We have to get out of here," Nathan decided, already moving toward the front door. "Pack essentials only. We're not staying here tonight." "Where will we go?" Olivia asked, grabbing Caleb's hand. "Somewhere far from forests, a hotel in the city center. Somewhere those things can't follow us." As they hastily gathered supplies, medications, clothes, Emma's special formula, Olivia felt a strange resistance each time she moved away from the windows facing the backyard, as if some invisible force was trying to pull her toward the waiting bears. Emma's cries had stopped, replaced by an eerie silence that somehow felt more threatening. When Olivia glanced at her daughter in Nathan's arms, she found Emma staring back with an expression no 10-month-old should be capable of, a look of determination mixed with something like regret. "Hurry," Nathan urged, already heading for the front door with Emma and their hastily packed bag. Olivia grabbed Caleb's hand and followed, fighting the irrational urge to look back, to return to the kitchen window, to make contact with whatever waited in their backyard. They piled into the car, Nathan passing Emma to Olivia before jumping into the driver's seat and starting the engine with shaking hands. As they pulled out of the driveway, Olivia couldn't resist a final glance back at their home. What she saw made her blood freeze. A woman was standing in their backyard, barely visible in the growing darkness. Not a bear this time, but a human figure with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a practical bun. Even from this distance, Olivia recognized her from the newspaper photograph. Dr. Helena Walsh, the missing researcher. She was looking directly at their departing car, one hand raised as if in greeting or warning. And at her sides, flanking her like sentinels, stood two massive black bears. The Granville Plaza Hotel in downtown Jefferson offered anonymous luxury. Exactly what the Bennett family needed. Nathan checked them in under his brother's name, paying cash for the room and requesting the highest floor available. "Just being cautious," he explained to the bemused desk clerk, who clearly thought he was dealing with a celebrity avoiding paparazzi. Their suite on the 23rd floor featured floor-to-ceiling windows with spectacular city views, but the first thing Nathan did was close all the curtains. Olivia didn't object. After what she'd seen in their backyard, the thought of being observed from outside, even 23 stories up, was unbearable. While Nathan settled Caleb with the room service menu and a movie, Olivia took Emma into the bedroom to change her diaper and check her injuries. The baby seemed subdued now, her earlier unsettling awareness replaced by normal infant behavior. She fussed when Olivia accidentally bumped her cast and babbled nonsense as babies should. Had they imagined everything? The stress of Emma's accident, combined with sleep deprivation and the strange comments from the ranger, maybe it had all collaborated to create an illusion of something supernatural where there was only coincidence. But then Olivia remembered the carved stone. She retrieved it from her pocket, studying the crude symbols again. One clearly resembled a bear standing upright. Another looked like a small human figure. Between them was an odd circular pattern with lines radiating outward. "The bridge," she murmured, recalling Caleb's words. As if responding to the word, Emma suddenly grew still, her eyes focusing on the stone with unnatural intensity. Her small hand reached for it, fingers grasping. Instinctively, Olivia pulled the stone away. "No, sweetie, this isn't for babies." Emma's face contorted, first in frustration, then with something darker. Her eyes seemed to change, not in color, but in depth, as if something else were looking out from behind them. She opened her mouth and emitted a sound that was nothing like a baby's cry. It was a low, rumbling growl, identical to the sound the mother bear had made on the mountainside. Olivia dropped the stone in shock. It clattered to the floor beside the bed, and instantly Emma returned to normal, her expression clearing as she reached for her favorite stuffed rabbit with her uninjured arm. Heart pounding, Olivia backed away, then called for Nathan. When he entered the bedroom, she wordlessly pointed to the stone on the floor. "She growled, Nathan," Olivia whispered, "like a bear when I wouldn't give her the stone." Nathan's face was ashen as he carefully picked up the stone. "This is crazy. None of this makes sense. Caleb said she's been talking to him through thoughts. He said she's a bridge between us and the bears, and we both saw Dr. Walsh in our backyard, a woman who's been missing for 3 weeks. Olivia's voice cracked. What if something happened to Emma when she fell? Something beyond the physical injuries? Nathan sank onto the edge of the bed, turning the stone over in his hands. You mean, like, possession? Or some kind of mental connection to the bears? I don't know, but she's not acting like herself. The growling, the strange awareness in her eyes, the way the bears responded to her crying. Olivia fought back tears. That's not our Emma. We need help, Nathan decided. Professional help. What kind of professional deals with whatever this is? Olivia gestured helplessly. We can't exactly tell a doctor our baby is communicating with bears. Nathan thought for a moment. No, but we can find out more about Dr. Walsh's research. If she found something that connects humans and bears, maybe understanding her work will help us understand what's happening to Emma. He pulled out his phone and began searching. Walsh published her work through Jefferson State University. They might have access to her research notes or colleagues who worked with her. As Nathan researched, Olivia returned to the living area of the suite to check on Caleb. He was happily watching cartoons, seemingly untroubled by the day's events. Caleb, honey, Olivia said gently, sitting beside him. Can you tell me more about how Emma talks to you? Caleb shrugged, eyes still on the television. It's like when you think something to yourself, but it's not your thought. It's hers. It started at the hospital. What does she talk to you about? Mostly the bears. She says they're smart, smarter than people think, and they need help. A chill ran through Olivia. Help with what? I don't know. She doesn't really explain that part. But she says the doctor lady is helping them now, and that's why they need a bridge. A bridge between bears and humans? Is that what Emma means? Caleb nodded. She says bears can't talk to humans, and humans don't listen to bears, so they need someone in between, a translator. And that's Emma? She's the translator? No, Caleb said, finally turning away from the cartoon to look at his mother with solemn eyes. Emma says she's just practicing with the bridge. The real bridge is someone else. A knock at the door made them both jump. Nathan emerged from the bedroom, frowning. Are we expecting room service already? He asked. Olivia shook her head. I didn't order anything yet. Nathan approached the door cautiously. Who is it? He called. Jefferson City Police, came the reply. We need to speak with the Bennett family. Nathan looked through the peephole, then turned to Olivia with alarm. It's Ranger Keene, he mouthed silently, and someone in a police uniform. Olivia's heart sank. How had they found them so quickly? And why was a park ranger working with city police? Mr. Bennett, we know you're in there, Ranger Keene's voice called through the door. This concerns your daughter's safety. Please open the door. Nathan and Olivia exchanged panicked glances. Running wasn't an option, not with 2 young children, one with a broken arm and head injury. Stay with the kids, Nathan whispered to Olivia. If anything happens, take them down the service stairs. Before Olivia could protest, Nathan composed himself and opened the door, revealing Ranger Keene and a stern-looking police officer. Mr. Bennett, Keene said briskly, may we come in? This is Officer Ramirez with Jefferson City Police. What's this about? Nathan asked, blocking the doorway. Officer Ramirez stepped forward. Sir, we've received concerning information about your daughter's accident. We need to verify her condition and ensure her safety. My daughter is fine, Nathan stated firmly. She's recovering from her injuries under medical supervision. Nevertheless, Ranger Keene insisted, we have a responsibility to follow up on reports of unusual circumstances surrounding minors. What reports? From whom? Keene's expression hardened. Mr. Bennett, I strongly suggest you cooperate. Otherwise, Officer Ramirez will be forced to request an emergency welfare check, which could involve Child Protective Services. The threat hung in the air, leaving Nathan little choice. Reluctantly, he stepped aside to allow them entry. Olivia stood protectively near the children, her arm around Caleb. Emma held close to her chest. The baby was awake but quiet, her eyes tracking the newcomers with that unsettling awareness. Mrs. Bennett, Officer Ramirez nodded politely. We apologize for the disturbance, but we need to ask a few questions about what happened in the park. Ranger Keene's attention, however, was fixed on Emma. May I see the child? She asked, though her tone made it clear it wasn't really a request. Every maternal instinct in Olivia screamed against handing her baby to this cold, suspicious woman. She's resting, Olivia said. Her injuries need to be kept stable. I'll be careful, Keene insisted, stepping closer. I just need to check something. Nathan moved to stand between Keene and his family. Check what, exactly? You're a park ranger, not a doctor. Mr. Bennett, Officer Ramirez interjected, please cooperate. Ranger Keene is working with a special environmental response unit. There are concerns about possible wildlife-borne pathogens your daughter may have been exposed to during her accident. Pathogens? Olivia repeated incredulously. The hospital checked her thoroughly. There was no infection. Some exposures don't manifest immediately, Keene said smoothly. We just need to rule out certain transmissions. The way she emphasized the word made Olivia's skin crawl. This wasn't about disease. It was about whatever connection had formed between Emma and the bears. Somehow, Keene knew about it. As if sensing her mother's distress, Emma began to fuss, her face scrunching up in preparation to cry. But what emerged wasn't a cry. It was that same unnatural growl from earlier, low and rumbling and unmistakably bestial. Officer Ramirez took an involuntary step back, his hand moving instinctively toward his holster. What the hell was that? Ranger Keene, however, showed no surprise, only grim satisfaction. Just as I suspected, she murmured. It's already progressing. She pulled a radio from her belt. This is Keene, target confirmed, proceeding with extraction. Extraction? Nathan demanded. What are you talking about? Nobody is extracting our daughter anywhere. But Keene was already speaking into her radio again. Subject shows signs of advanced integration. Recommend full containment protocol. Officer Ramirez looked increasingly uncomfortable. Ranger Keene, you didn't mention anything about an extraction. This was supposed to be a welfare check. Plans change, officer, Keene replied coldly. This is now a matter of public safety. Public safety? Olivia echoed, clutching Emma tighter. She's a baby. Not anymore, she isn't, Keene stated flatly. Not entirely. What's looking back at you from those eyes isn't just your daughter, Mrs. Bennett. Surely you've noticed. The blunt confirmation of their worst fears sent a wave of dizziness through Olivia. So they weren't imagining it. Something had changed in Emma, something these people knew about and had been tracking. What happened to our daughter? Nathan demanded, his voice breaking. What's wrong with her? Keene's expression remained impassive. Nothing's wrong with her. She's experiencing what Dr. Walsh called consciousness blending. Your daughter's accident created the perfect conditions for contact. A young, developing brain, physical proximity to one of the affected bears, and extreme stress. The bears have been trying to establish communication for months, but they needed the right vessel. "You're insane," Nathan said, but there was doubt in his voice. After what they'd witnessed, could they really dismiss her explanation? "The missing research team," Olivia said suddenly. "They found this happening with the bears. That's what Dr. Walsh was studying." Keene's eyes narrowed. Dr. Walsh went native. She crossed ethical and legal boundaries with her experiments. When we tried to shut her down, she disappeared into the wilderness with her team. They've been assisting the bears ever since. "Assisting them with what?" Nathan asked. "Communication, evolution, rebellion." Keene's voice was bitter. "Walsh believes bears deserve equal status with humans, that they've developed a collective consciousness sophisticated enough to warrant legal protection and territory rights. She's been using her technology to accelerate their cognitive development." Officer Ramirez looked as confused as the Bennetts felt. "Ranger, none of this was in the briefing. I was told this was about an animal attack and potential rabies exposure." "You were told what you needed to know," Keene snapped. She refocused on Nathan and Olivia. "Your daughter is now part of something dangerous. The bears are using her as a conduit, a bridge between species. It started with her, but it won't end with her. They're learning, adapting. If this continues, they'll establish permanent communication channels with humans." "Why is that dangerous?" Olivia asked, thinking of the mother bear who had protected Emma rather than harmed her. "Because they want their land back," Keene stated flatly. "All of it. The parks, the forests, the mountains, every acre we've developed. Walsh has convinced them they have the right to reclaim their territory, by force if necessary. The absurdity of the situation, standing in a luxury hotel room discussing bear rebellions with a park ranger who suddenly seemed more like a government agent, might have been laughable if not for Emma's unnatural growl still echoing in their ears. "So, what happens now?" Nathan asked, his voice tight with suppressed fear. A new voice answered from the hallway. "Now, we leave. Quickly." They all turned to see Ranger Melissa Dawson standing in the doorway, breathing hard as if she'd run up the stairs. But she wasn't alone. Behind her stood a disheveled woman with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a practical bun. Dr. Helena Walsh herself. "Keene," Dawson said, her voice steady despite her obvious tension, "step away from that family." Ranger Keene's face contorted with fury. "Dawson, I should have known you'd turn traitor too." Her hand moved to her hip, where Olivia noticed for the first time the outline of what appeared to be a handgun beneath her uniform jacket. "No one's a traitor here," Walsh said, stepping forward. "We're trying to prevent a disaster. The bears don't want conflict. They want communication, understanding. They want our land," Keene spat. "They want coexistence," Walsh corrected. "The ability to negotiate rather than be subject to our one-sided decisions." Officer Ramirez looked thoroughly confused now, his gaze darting between the two factions. "Will someone please explain what's really going on here?" Emma chose that moment to emit another growl, followed by a series of sounds that mimicked the pattern of speech without forming actual words. Everyone in the room fell silent, watching the baby with varying degrees of fear and fascination. Dr. Walsh approached slowly, her eyes fixed on Emma. "She's trying to communicate," she said softly. "The neural connection is stronger than I expected in someone so young." "Stay away from my daughter," Olivia warned, backing toward the bedroom. "Mrs. Bennett, I understand your fear," Walsh said gently. "But your daughter isn't in danger from the bears or from me. She's special. She's formed a connection that most humans never could. The bears recognized her potential immediately. When she fell, Nathan said slowly, the mother bear didn't just protect her by chance. Walsh nodded. Bears have a rudimentary form of telepathy between themselves, a shared consciousness my team has been studying for years. They sensed Emma's receptive mind when she came into their territory. The fall created a moment of crisis where the barriers between consciousnesses became permeable. So, a bear is inside my daughter's mind? Olivia asked, horrified. Not exactly. It's more like a channel has opened, a bridge allowing partial communication. Emma is still Emma, but she can now perceive and transmit bear thoughts. This is ridiculous, Keen snapped, drawing her weapon and pointing it at Walsh. You violated every protocol, endangered civilians, and now you're spreading dangerous misinformation. Officer Ramirez finally reacted, drawing his own weapon but keeping it pointed downward. Everyone needs to calm down. There are children present. Dawson moved carefully toward the Bennetts. Nathan, Olivia, you need to trust us. Keen represents a government division that wants to contain this situation permanently. They see the bear's evolving consciousness as a threat to human dominance. And you don't? Nathan asked. I see it as an opportunity, Dawson replied, a chance for coexistence rather than conflict. The bears reached out to Emma because children are more receptive, more open to connection. They don't want to harm her. They want to learn from her and teach through her. Emma made another sound, not a growl this time, but a soft cooing noise. Her eyes fixed on Dr. Walsh with apparent recognition. She knows you, Olivia realized. Walsh nodded. The bears have shared memories of me with her. I've been working with them, helping them understand humans better while learning their forms of communication. Enough talking, Keen barked, her gun now trained on Walsh. Dawson restrained the civilians. Walsh, you're under arrest for violation of national security protocols. What agency do you really work for, Ranger Keen? Nathan asked suddenly. Because this doesn't sound like standard Park Service procedure. A thin smile crossed Keen's face. Let's just say I represent interests that understand the true implications of Walsh's work. If bears can achieve consciousness sophisticated enough for communication and territory demands, what's next? Legal rights? Political representation? The end of human expansion? Or the beginning of a more balanced relationship with the natural world, Walsh countered. The bears don't want to replace us. They want recognition. Partnership. As the adults argued, Caleb tugged at his mother's sleeve. Emma wants to show you something, he whispered. What do you mean, honey? She says to look in her mind. She can show you the bear's home. Before Olivia could respond, Emma reached up with her uninjured arm and touched her mother's face. The contact was gentle, typical baby exploration, but what followed was anything but typical. Olivia gasped as her vision swam, then cleared to reveal a scene she wasn't physically witnessing. A forest clearing at dawn, misty and serene, where several bears moved with purpose around what appeared to be the remains of the researchers' camp. But they weren't destroying it, they were using it. One bear delicately adjusted what looked like a modified radio antenna, while another sorted through a collection of stones, similar to the one Olivia had found in Emma's blanket. In the center of the clearing stood a massive female bear that Olivia somehow knew was the same one who had protected Emma. The bear looked directly at her, or rather, through Emma's shared vision, with unmistakable intelligence. A voice that wasn't quite a voice, more like a felt understanding, formed in Olivia's mind. Your cub bridges our worlds. We mean no harm. We seek balance. The vision faded as Emma's hand dropped away, leaving Olivia breathless and disoriented in the hotel room, where Keene and Walsh were still arguing, oblivious to what had just transpired. "I saw them," Olivia whispered to Nathan. "Through Emma, I saw the bears." Nathan's expression was a mixture of fear and wonder. "What did you see?" "They're organized, intelligent, using the research team's equipment." She swallowed hard. "And they spoke to me, Nathan. Not with words, but I understood them." Their whispered exchange was interrupted when Keene suddenly stepped forward, gesturing with her weapon. "Enough debate. The child comes with me for evaluation and containment. Standard protocols must be followed." "She's not going anywhere with you," Nathan said firmly, placing himself between Keene and his family. "You don't have a choice," Keene replied coldly. "This is a matter of national security now." Officer Ramirez finally raised his weapon, but to everyone's surprise he pointed it at Keene rather than the Bennetts or Walsh. "Ma'am, I need to see some official identification for this agency you claim to represent. Park rangers don't have authority to remove children from their parents or make arrests for national security."